Hi all. So today is our eighth session of our tutorial class, and today we're gonna do some exercises related to chapter 14. And actually, it's still about inventory management, but to be more specific, it's talking about MRP or material requirement planning. And maybe before we do we solve the problem, I'm gonna explain a bit about what is MRP. So basically, MRP is dependent demand techniques that uses a bill of material, inventory, expected receipts, and a master production schedule to determine material requirements. So on that MRP definition that I just mentioned, it said that they're using bill of material. So basically, bill of material is a list of quantities of components, ingredients, and materials required to make a product. And I also mentioned that there is a dependent demand, right, on the MRP definition. So actually, dependent demand is like the demand for one item is related to the demand for another item. For example, let's say we're selling burgers, and you know that in one burger there's some ingredients like the bun and then the patty and salad. Oh, sorry, the lettuce and then tomato and then pickles or cheese. Yeah, you name it. And those ingredients, the demand for those ingredients is depend on the demand for the burger itself. So that's what we call as dependent demand. Okay, so that's a bit explanation about MRP and what we're gonna do in this tutorial. Okay, let's do the problem. We're gonna do it in Excel just like usual. It's problem 2. Okay, first problem 1. So Dinda Craft Store has information of demand for wedding souvenir products uniques as follows. Here given the tables. Okay, there is a month and the requirements for each month, requirements of the souvenir, and then inventory of units in the warehouse is 100 units. So it's the beginning inventory. The beginning inventory is 100 units, and then holding cost of units per unit per month is 500 rupiah, and the setup cost is 100,000 rupiah, and the lead time is 1 month. Okay, and here we are required to calculate the planned order release using the following techniques. So here we could see that there are lot for lot, economic order quantity, and periodic order quantity. So basically those are lot sizing techniques. When we're gonna make a decision related to lot sizing, we could use these 3 techniques. So lot sizing decision is process of or techniques used in determining lot size, and we could use these 3 techniques. Okay, first we're gonna do using lot for lot. Okay, so basically lot for lot is a lot sizing technique that generates or produced exactly what's required, okay, to meet the plan or requirements of dependent demand. So we order, the amount of the order is exactly the same with the requirements. And so if we're using lot for lot, we don't have any safety stock and no anticipation of further orders. Okay, so let's start here in this table. We have month, gross requirement, schedule receipt, projected on hand, net requirement, planned order receipt, and planned order release. And for month and gross requirement, the info has already given in the problem. Okay, in this table. You just have to copy it, and then don't forget that it said we have 100 units as our beginning inventory. So we place that 100 in projected on hand. Okay, so projected on hand is the other word for inventory. And then next we could start doing this lot sizing calculation. Okay, so at the first month we have no requirement of that souvenir, so our inventory, this 100 units, it's not used, right? And it will be carried to the next month, which is the second month. So at the second month we still have 100 units in our project on hand, or our inventory. And at the second month our requirement is 175 units, while our inventory is only 100. So there is shortage 75 units. Okay, so we're lack 75 units, and the shortage is for the requirement, the net requirement. Okay, so actually for net requirement we get it by gross requirement plus scheduled receipt, and then minus the projected on hand. But since in this case there's no scheduled receipt, so just ignore it. So to find the net requirement, we get it by reducing the gross requirement, the units required, and we already have 100 in our hand, so we have to fulfill the remaining units, which is 75 units. And how to fulfill the remaining units is we have to place order, okay, because there is shortage, so we have to place order. But remember that the lead time is 1 month. Lead time is is 1 month. Okay, so it means we have to place the order 1 month before the current month. Okay, so the current month is the second month, so we have to place the order at the first month. And how many we have to order is it's equal to the unit required, which is the net requirement. Okay, so we only place the order as much as 75 units because the shortage is only 75 units. Okay, so remember, lot for lot is we only generates or produced exactly what's required. Okay, next, because we placed the order at the first month, so this order will be arrived at our place at the second month, and we're gonna write it at the plan order receipt as our plan order receipt. Okay, so the flow is you have to know how many project on hand that do we have, and then how much is the net requirement. Is there any net requirement? Is there any shortage or not? If there is any net requirement or shortage, we have to place our order 1 month before, or you just have to adjust with the lead time. And then don't forget to write the plan order receipt, okay, to fulfill the shortage. Okay, so now it's already fulfilled this requirement. Okay, our requirement is 175 units, and then we could fulfill the requirement using our inventory or project on hand plus the 75 units remaining. We use the plan order receipt that we received at this month. Okay, so basically that's the flow for doing this kind of problem. Okay, next to the third month. So here the requirement for the third month is 200 units, while we have no inventory, right? Because our inventory or project on hand had already used and the second month to fulfill the requirement on the second month. So now we have no units at all. So to fulfill the requirement, we have to place our order like all of them, 200 units, because the net requirement is also 200 units, right? We get it by gross requirement plus schedule receipt and then minus the project on hand. Okay, so this is our requirement while we have no inventory at all. So we have no units to fulfill the requirement. It means we have to place the order to fulfill the net requirement. Okay, and when will we place the order? It's depends on the lead time. Since the lead time is 1 month, then we have to order 1 month before. It means we have to place the order 200 units, okay, at the second month. So at the third month, those 200 units will be arrived. Okay, now these 200 units as our planned order receipt will be used to fulfill the gross requirement for the third month. Okay, that's for the third month. Next, for the fourth month, the gross requirement is 220 units, while we have no inventory at all, right? We're not carrying any units from the previous month. So the net requirement is just like before, because our requirement is 220 while we have no inventory to fulfill those requirements. So we have to get all of those requirements as our net requirement by placing the order again. And we have to place the order 1 month before, which is at the third month. So at the fourth month, those 220 units will be arrived and will be used to fulfill the gross requirement. And also for the next month. Okay, so there's no inventory, and then for net requirement is gross requirement plus schedule receipt and then minus project on hand. So our net requirement is 150. So we have to place the order 1 month before, 150 units, and then so those units will be arrived at 5th month and will be used to fulfill these requirements. And so for the rest of the month there will be no inventory. Okay, because it's lot for lot. We only order exactly what we need. And so there is no net requirement since we have no requirement for the 6th month, right? Since we have no net requirement, it means we don't have to place any order because there's no need to fulfill any requirement. And move to the next month, the requirement is 150 while we have no inventory at all, so we have to get all of them 150 units by placing the order. So we have 150 units as our net requirement, and place the order 1 month before, and then it will be arrived and will be used to fulfill this gross requirement. And the last one for lot is just the same, 100, because we have no inventory while our requirement is 200 units. Since we have net requirement, it means we have to place the order 1 month before and will be arrived here and will be used to fulfill this requirement. And now we have to calculate for the total cost. Okay, total cost if we are using lot for lot techniques. So the first one we have to calculate for holding costs. Holding costs, so the variable that we have to look up is the project on hand. And since we have no inventory from the 3rd until the 8th month, so we have to calculate only for the 2nd month, because for the 1st month we don't have to consider it as our inventory, because there is no holding cost or inventory cost incurred, because it's the beginning. Okay, so we start calculating the the holding cost at the second month, because the beginning inventory at the first month carry it to the second month. So that's why the holding cost is starting to occur or incur at the second month. Okay, so don't forget that the holding cost per unit per month is 500 rupiah. Okay, so it's 100 times 500, and then for the setup cost, we have to calculate the setup cost as well. So basically, if we want to calculate for setup cost, we have to look at our plan order release. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, right? Wait. So basically setup cost is incurred every time there is a production, or in this case is placing the order. So it's not about the sum of these numbers, but the count how many we place the order. Okay, so it's we order as 6 times, so it's 6 times 100,000 rupiah, and it becomes our setup cost. And for the total cost, just add the holding cost with the setup cost, and now we get 650,000 as our total cost if we're using lot for lot techniques. Now we're gonna calculate for the economic order quantity. Okay, the second technique is economic order quantity, or EOQ. So basically EOQ useful when we have relatively constant demand, but in this case the requirements is not really constant though. So to use this technique, economic order quantity or EOQ, we have to find the Q star first, or the EOQ, the number of EOQ. So if you remember, this is the formula if you want to find the Q star or EOQ. Okay, the root square root of 2 times 3 times S divided with the holding cost. The D is for annual demand, and in this case the S is for setup cost, H for holding cost. But in this case we don't have the annual demand yet, because in this case we only have 8 months as our problem. So 8 months is not equal with 1 year, right? So to find the annual demand, we have to use this kind of equation formula, like you have to divide 12 months with 8 months, which is the number of months in this case, and then the result will be multiplied with the total demand or the total gross requirements for 8 months, which is this number. Okay, so you can see it. The demand for 8 months is the total for this gross requirements from the first month until the 8th month. And then to find the annual demand, you have to divide 12 months divided with 8 months, and then you have to multiply it with the demand for 8 months. Okay, now we have the annual demand, and we have setup cost, holding cost. It's stated in the problem, but in the problem it said that the holding cost is only per unit per month. while if you want to find the EOQ, the holding cost should be in a year. So we have to multiply the 500 with 12 months first. Okay, so the holding cost per unit per year is 6,000. Okay, now we already have the annual demand and annual holding cost. Now you just have to input these numbers into this equation, and if you want to use the formula on Excel, it will be like this, and the total of EOQ is 234. So this number of EOQ will be our amount of ordering units. Okay, let's do it. Project on hand, it's the beginning inventory 100, just like before, and then since we have no requirement at the first month, this inventory is not used and will be carried to the next month. So in the second month we have 100 units as our inventory, and then the net requirement is still the same because our inventory is only 100 while the requirement is 175 units. So we're like 75 units, and this remaining units we fulfill it using by placing the order. But this time we don't order as much as the net requirement, but as much as the economic order quantity, which is 234 units. So in this techniques, every time we place order, the amount will be equals to this number, which is the EOQ. So it's not exactly what we need. We're not ordering exactly what we need. That's the difference between lot for lot techniques and then with the economic order quantity. So the amount for plan order release for economic order quantity will always be 234 units. Okay, we order 1 month before, and then it will be arrived at our place here at the second month. So now to fulfill this requirement 175 units, we are using this our inventory as much as 100 units, and the remaining 75 units using this plan order receipt that we have on second month. So 234 minus 75 will be our inventory, right? And it will be carried to the next month, and this is the remaining units after order receipt used to fulfill 75 units. Here I'll show you. Yep. So 159 as our inventory in the third month, we get it by reducing the order receipt at the second month minus the net requirement for the second month. Okay, so it's the remaining units that we have on the second month. Okay, now at the third month our requirement is 200, while our project on hand or our inventory only 159 units. So we still have shortage as much as 41 units. Okay, and it becomes our net requirement. Okay, the shortage is become our requirement, and then since there is a shortage or net requirements, we have to place order. Okay, since it's we are currently at the third month, so we have to place the order at the second month. Okay, 1 month before, because the lead time is 1 month, and we have to order just equals to the EOQ. It will always be like that. Okay, so 234 units will be arrived here, okay, as our plan order receipt, and these 200 units will be fulfilled using this units from our inventory, and the remaining 41 units will be fulfilled with this number 234 units, and the remaining of this plan order receipt will be our inventory and carried to the 4th month. Okay, so this is 193 units as the remaining units after we fulfill the net requirement at the 2nd month. And now to fulfill 220 units, we only have these units, okay? And so we have net requirements as much as the difference or the shortage. That it means we have to place the order as much as the EOQ and will be arrived here, okay? And 220 units will be fulfilled using our inventory, and the remaining 27 units will be fulfilled using the order receipt, and the remaining units on our order receipt will be our inventory and will be carried to the next month. Okay, so 207 units is the remaining units after we fulfill net requirement on the 4th month using the plan order receipt. Nah, this time our gross requirement is less than our inventory, so there is no net requirement, right? Because we could fulfill all of these 150 units using our inventory. So our inventory will be reduced as much as the requirement for the 5th month, and the remaining will be carried to the 6th month as inventory. Okay, so this is the remaining our remaining inventory, 60 units, and there is no requirement for 6 months, so just move to the next month and our inventory will remain the same. And for the 7th month, the requirement is 550 units. Our inventory is only 60 units, so we have net requirement as much as the shortage, which is 150 units minus 60. And this net requirement will be fulfilled using order receipt, so we have to place the order 1 month before and will be received here. Okay, so 150 units will be fulfilled using 60 from our inventory, and the remaining 90 units will be fulfilled using the plan order receipt, and the remaining plan order receipt will be our inventory and carry it to the 8 months. Okay, so this is 144, while the requirement for the 8th month is 200, so we still have to fulfill our net requirement as much as 56 units, and that's why we have to place order, and it will be arrived here. Nah, this time our requirement is only 200, while our project on hand or our inventory is 144, so this will be used to fulfill requirement, and the remaining 56 will be fulfilled using the plan order receipt. So the plan order receipt still have remaining units, right? 234 minus 56, and it becomes our inventory and will be carried to the next month. Okay, so this is our ending inventory. Now we have to calculate for the total cost. Just like before, it consists of holding cost and setup cost. Now holding cost, don't forget that to calculate the holding cost, you have to start from the 2nd month. Okay, because this is beginning inventory and there's no holding inventory incurred yet. So it would be start here from the 2nd month until the ending inventory. Okay, I'll show you. Nah, so to find the holding cost, you have to sum all of the number of inventory or project on hand starting from the second month until the end of our inventory, okay? Our ending inventory here. You have to sum all of them and then multiply with 500. So our holding cost is 550,500. And for the setup cost, you have to look at the plan order release. Okay, so how many times that we place our order. So you don't have to sum all of this number, but you have to count how many times that we place our order. So here we ordered as much as 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 times. So 5 times 100,000 as our setup cost. So the total cost is this number, okay, 1,050,500. Next, for periodic order quantity, the third technique, basically POQ or periodic order quantity is an inventory ordering technique that issues orders on a predetermined time interval with the order quantity covering the total of the interval's requirements. So before we fulfilling this table, we have to find the interval first. Okay, so basically to find the interval, okay, periodic order quantity interval, you have to divide the EOQ number divided with the average weekly usage. So for the EOQ, we already found it here, and you have to divide with the average weekly usage. Okay. So since it's in month, so you just have to adjust it. So it becomes average monthly usage, and we get average monthly usage by dividing the annual demand with the number of months in a year, which is 12. So you have to divide 234. You have to divide 234 units, divide with this number, annual demand, divided with 12 months. Okay, you could see the formula here, and the total for the interval is 2 months. So we have to place order to cover 2 months requirements. To be more clear, let's start the fulfill table. Project on hand is 100, and there's no requirement, so next to the second month, still 100 because it's not used. And then our requirement is 175 units, so there's still a shortage, and it becomes our net requirement 75 units. And here we have to place order, right? Because we have a shortage. We placed the order 1 month before, but this time the total of the units that we order is 275 units. Where do we get it? Is by adding this net requirement, okay, plus the gross requirement for the next month, which is the third month. And the gross requirement for the third month is 200, so the planned order release or the number of units that we order is as much as the net requirement for this month plus the gross requirement for the next month. Okay, so our order will be received here, and there will be 200 units remaining as our inventory, okay, because this requirement will be fulfilled using our inventory, and the remaining 75 units will be using this plan order receipt. So there will be 200 units as our inventory and will be carried to the next month. And since at the third month gross requirement is equals to our inventory, so there's no net requirement, so we don't have to place any order. Okay, so next to the fourth month, our inventory is 0, right? While our requirement is 220 units, so the net requirement is 220 units because there's no inventory to fulfill maybe a half of them. And to fulfill current month requirement, we have to place order, okay, 1 month before, which is at the third month. But we have to order as much as the total of net requirement for the fourth month plus the gross requirement for the fifth month, okay, so it becomes 370 units, okay, and will be arrived here, received. Okay, now to fulfill the fourth requirements, we use plan order receipt 220 units, and the remaining will be carried to the next month and will be used to fulfill the gross requirement at fifth month. So the net requirement becomes 0, and we have 0 inventory here, and since there's no requirement, so our net requirement is also 0. Okay, for the 7th month, gross requirement is 150 units, while we have no inventory at all. So our net requirement is equals to the gross requirement, and since we have net requirements, it means we have to place order 1 month before, and we order as much as the total of net requirement for the 7th month plus the gross requirement for the next month. So the total is 350 units. Okay, and then here it's received, okay, and this number will be used as much as 150 units to fulfill the requirement at 7th month, and the remaining units will be carried to the next month. 200, sorry, at this column, okay, 200. And since the gross requirements is equals to the project on hand or our inventory, so there is no net requirement. So that's the end of periodic order quantity technique. So for if you're asking for the inventory, there's no inventory because all of this number 200 units used to fulfill or cover the requirement for the 8th month. So at the ending inventory, there is no inventory. Now we're find the holding cost starting from the 2nd month, okay, until the end, and then you have to multiply with 500, okay, so this is the holding cost. And then for the setup cost, you have to find how many you order 3 times, okay, so 3 times 100,000. Okay, so if you're using this technique, our total cost is 625,000. And what's the cost for each technique? Okay, we already have calculated for each total cost, including the holding cost. Yeah, which technique should be chosen by Dinda Craft Store? So if we calculate for the total cost, we should have choose for the lowest one, right? Because we don't want to choose a technique which costly, so we have to find a technique which have the lowest cost. Okay, this is 650 ini over 1 million. Okay, so this is the lowest one. So Dinda Craft Store should choose periodic order quantity to make a lot sizing decision. Okay, so that's for problem number 1.